Edmonton's video, Winter Cycling Foundations and Instruction for the Shaping the Future Conference 2021. If you're a seasoned cyclist and curious about winter cycling, or if you want to teach winter cycling, we hope to provide you the basics to do that. What we're going to focus on is providing lots of information and showing you how to develop curiosity in people who want to learn. I bring to the table, my name is Molly Turnbull, I bring to the table 25 years of winter cycling experience, but way more important than that, I've been around the Bike Edmonton community a long time. And what we focus on here is listening to what community members ask and listening to the responses and gathering information and trying to provide as much information to people as we possibly can so they can actively make choices in their life to learn how to enjoy their ride better. We're going to be discussing bikes, picking bikes, gear, clothing, route finding, and some of the psychological aspects of winter cycling. Normally, we teach a 3-hour course on winter cycling, and we consider that the basics. So, of course, we're not going to be able to hit everything here. There's a wealth of information out in the world. So what I'm going to focus on is basics, like what are the textiles? What are the bike shapes? We're not going to get really carried away. That's for you to continue with your curiosity and to look into more information for yourself. So with that, thank you again for having me at the conference. Let's just talk a little bit more. I'll explain to you what is Bike Edmonton. Bike Edmonton. We're a nonprofit organization that's been running for over 40 years. What we do is we bring resources to people who want to cycle around the city. Sometimes we're out in the community, and sometimes we're in our fully functional bicycle repair shops. Out in the community, sometimes we're providing repairs, sometimes we're teaching mechanical skills, or sometimes we're helping people ride around, learning route finding or how to ride on the road so that they can experience their vibrant city on a bicycle. If you want to come into our shops, you'll find that the shops are run mostly by volunteers who are very eager to help you learn what you need to learn to get going. Together we repair bikes, and we have courses on bike repair and all kinds of different subjects. The other thing we do is we receive donations of bicycles, for which we're really grateful. Some of the bikes aren't usable, but we take off parts that are usable and we recycle the rest. And other bikes we can build up so that people can find affordable bikes to ride. So whether you want to be out in the community learning or in our bike shops learning, you're welcome to join our community and be part of our community so that we can all fight together for a more vibrant city.
Welcome to the first installment of Bike Edmonton's Winter Cycling Series. Whether you're new to winter riding, an experienced four-season cyclist, or just frost bike curious, we have all sorts of tips, tricks, and stories in store for you. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Winter riding is not expensive, it's not difficult, and it's not any more hardcore than walking, skating, or skiing in the cold season. And the best way to get started? It's momentum, baby. Don't stop. Don't put away the bike. Keep riding and experimenting every day as conditions change. Everyone has different comfort levels when it comes to risk and cold. Getting out there, trying it yourself, finding out what works for you is worth more than all the tutorials.
Regardless of what kind of cycling you want to do, choosing a bike that makes you happy is central to having good adventures. So in this section, we're going to talk a lot about choosing a bike and a little bit about maintenance and inspecting the bike. There's a lot of information on the internet about choosing a bike. We're not going to focus at all about what you need to know to choose a performance bike or race. We're not even going to touch that. What we specialize in at Bike Edmonton is we specialize in everyday cycling. So we're going to choose and look at everyday bikes. What we'll start with is looking at the different shapes of bikes and how the shape affects balance. Pretty important in winter cycling. And then we'll also look at sizing the bike. So you can choose a bike that's the right size for you. One that's too little or too big can really affect your ride, knee health, balance, all kinds of things. And then we'll quickly run through the kinds of things you can look for on a bike so that you can change up parts or add parts to make your ride even better. So for example, if you wanted wider tires, we'd have to look at the bike to see if it would accommodate that. And if you want a rack, some bikes are easier than others to attach a rack to. So we'll go through all that. And in the end, you'll be able to choose a bike that's right for you, which might be the one you already own, or you might be able to counsel somebody else about their bike. And then we'll quickly look at inspecting your bike for safety and bike drivetrain maintenance.
Hi, I'm Biz. I volunteer with Bike Edmonton as a bike builder, and I just wanted to say that you don't necessarily need a brand new bike when picking out a bike. You don't need the newest, fanciest model. For example, you may dream about owning a fat bike for winter cycling, but really many different kinds of bikes can be used for cycling in the wintertime. Next time you're in your Bike Edmonton shop for repairs, ask the volunteers if they think that the bike you already have may work, because it may just work for winter cycling as is. You may need a little adjustment with what kind of tires you have on it or something like that, but generally bikes, there's lots of different kinds of bikes that will work. If you are deciding you need a new bike, consider a refurbished bike. The bikes sold at Bike Edmonton are all checked off by a bike mechanic as good to go. And we always make sure that when you buy a bike that you ride it first, because it is important that you get a feel for how it works for you, especially for kids, because kids' bikes can be too heavy or not maneuver properly if they are not the right size. So let's talk about bike geometry. Different bikes are just set up in different ways to accommodate for different factors. For example, a road bike is designed to go faster. So we take a look at a road bike here. The wheelbase is quite long, and that's the point where the wheels touch the ground. And that is to put you in a position where you're able to use your leg muscles more efficiently and get you going as fast as possible. Mountain bike is all about balance, so you're going to be a little bit more upright, but you're still in control of the bike to the best of your abilities at high speeds. Okay, and with a city bike or a cruiser, you are the most upright, which shifts your weight backwards and makes it so that there's not a lot of weight on the front tire, which can make it very unpredictable for conditions such as gravel roads or winter cycling. So let's talk about sizing for a bike, because we're all shaped differently. We want to talk about sizing based on the frame, because the saddle can be adjusted later. When you're sizing a bike to yourself, you want to straddle the bike, and you should be able to lift the back and front of the bike and have about 1 to 2 inches of space to lift between your legs. And this is talking about a frame with a horizontal bar at the top. Not all of them have that, and sometimes you have to use your imagination. Molly, why don't you come in here with your bike? We'll see if it's a good fit for you. Okay, can you straddle it like I was saying? Beautiful. All right, Molly, are you able to lift the front and back up there and get enough space in between? That looks pretty good. This would be on the big side, but within range for you.
Thank you.
All right, Eduardo, let's try you. Come on in. All right, can I get you to straddle the bike? And lift it up front to back. Let's see how that is. Okay, so that is way too much space. This bike is too small for you. And And so what you're gonna find is you may not be able to get the saddle high enough to protect your knees and get it into the right position to protect your joints. It's very important. But you also might feel a little bit crunched up in the front as you're leaning forward. Exactly. Okay, so this is an example of a bike that has a bar on the top of the frame that isn't horizontal. With mountain bikes, they often will drop the back in order to create a lower center of balance. But sometimes they also raise the front up, and this is one of those cases. So we'll get you to step over top of the frame there. Okay, so we can do the lift test, which of course is not going to be very accurate because that bar is not very straight. So we're going to have, this is one of those cases where we have to use our imaginations and decide whether or not that frame would actually be straight if that was the design of the frame. In this case, I think this bike is a little bit on the small side for you, but getting closer than the last one. So in this frame, we've got the top bar is not horizontal. The back is often lowered on mountain bikes so that the center of balance is lower, but is often raised at the front. And this is one of those cases. And so this is where we would use our imagination to create a straight plane when resizing this bike. Okay, you can get on your bike so we can see just how that is. Hop in the saddle. So we can see his saddle is set up so that at the longest point, he still has a slight bend in his knee. It is almost extended all the way, but he will not end up locking his knee. And this is to protect from injury in the joint. And there is no substitute when picking out a bike than taking it for a test ride. Another thing to consider when picking out your bike is the width of the frame. So you want to make sure that that frame is wide enough for you. You want to make sure that the fork is wide enough to accommodate for wider tires and fenders, especially if you're going to be riding in the wintertime. If your bike is not set up with the proper brazens to attach a full fender, a low profile fender will still work, but you still want to make sure that that fork can accommodate that. If you do plan on bringing anything with you, such as extra layers, books, groceries, your lunch for work, whatever, you may want to get a rack for your bike. Those are very, very handy and you will use them for more things than you realize. The other thing that you want to think about is a light, because especially in winter time, you pretty much need a light until about 9 or 10 a.m. and after 3 p.m. because it gets dark pretty early. When it comes to regular bike maintenance, there are 3 things that you should check, and they're easy to remember because remember them with A, B, C. Air pressure, brakes, and chain. Air pressure, most tires will be in the range of 40 to 65 PSI, and it will tell you that on the side of the tire. On the road, having your air pressure at the higher end, around 60, will give you good traction. In conditions with less, where you need a little bit more traction in the snow perhaps, you might want to be in the lower range, between 40 and 50. While you're down there, make sure that the quick release lever or bolts that hold the wheel onto the bike frame are secure, because you don't want those to be loose. Make sure that those are nice and tight. B is for brakes. So when you're checking your brakes, you want to depress your front brakes and give the bike a good push. It should lift the back tire up without any difficulty. Press your back brakes and push it forward. Your back tire should lock up and drag across the ground. You also want to make sure that when you're able to depress your brakes, there's lots of space for your fingers in between there, because you don't want to pinch your fingers when you in an emergency. And C is for chain. So it's important to make sure that your chain is regularly lubricated. If it squeaks, it's dry. If it's rusty, it's dry. And if it's dry, well, it's definitely dry. It's important to apply extra lube during the winter time. And there are 2 different kinds. There's dry chain oil and there's wet chain lubrication. Generally speaking, we would say that the dry lubrication is for dry conditions and the wet lubrication is for wet conditions. Here in Edmonton, you can generally get away with dry all year, because if you want to switch between wet and dry, you do need to clean the lubrication off, and that is a fair amount of work.
Let's talk drivetrain cleaning. Start by spraying down your chain with a diluted degreaser or soap and water. Next, while backpedaling, use a rag to wipe down the sides and top and bottom of the chain. Be sure to reposition the rag often so you're not wiping the dirt back onto the chain. Spray down the cassette as well, and then use a rag to floss in between each set of gears. Don't forget the jockey wheels. Spray down and wipe those little dirt reservoirs. You're cleaning everything the chain touches, so spray down the chain rings as well. You can always pull the chain off to reach the little nooks and crannies. Again, use your rag to floss in between the chain rings. Because the moving parts are exposed to the salt and sand of Edmonton's roads, you'll need to do this fairly often. Once everything's clean, let it dry and then add lube. Choose a chain lube that features salt resistance for maximum protection. Repeat whenever your chain looks rusty or gritty.
If you really want to have a 45-minute conversation in a community bike shop, come on in and ask the volunteers what they use on their hands for winter cycling. There's a lot to talk about for clothing and a lot of options and a lot of different strategies. So in the world of clothing, what you need to know is that people have different budgets. They have different comfort levels, hot, cold, whatever. And sometimes they need to arrive somewhere fancy. But whether you just like to keep it simple or you like to look at the latest technology and buy all the latest gadgets, there's some very basic principles about clothing that we'll run through today. We'll look at your physiology, what you need to address for safety to keep away the frostbite, layering. We'll look at some different textiles and what they're made of and some different options, clothing options for you. Let's begin. All right, let's go through some things you need to know about clothing. We'll back it up a little bit. I'll tell you, if you don't already know, a little bit about your physiology and body and what you have to pay attention to in terms of keeping your extremities warm. So you may know that most of your organs reside between your neck and your groin, and your body works, well, there's your brain, but your body works really hard to keep your torso at a stable temperature so that your organs don't fail and you don't die. Yay! So you may get frostbite if you don't pay attention, because if your torso's cool, your body will suck back the blood so you don't get as much blood to your extremities, your fingers, your toes, your nose, your ears, and those parts are prone to frostbite. So if you're chilly, check in with yourself. Are you allowing your torso to feel a little chilly and you're thinking, that's okay, I'm tough? Maybe what you need if you have really cold hands and feet is a layer or two on your torso. Let's see what kind of materials can keep you warm. Really, anything in your closet might work. If you have outdoor athletic gear for the winter, that might be awesome. Just look through your closet and I'll teach you about the textiles and how they keep you warm or regulated. This is cotton, plain old cotton t-shirt. You can wear it, why not, as part of your system. But what you should know about cotton is that it will hold sweat toward your skin and you'll feel clammy and cold, and it will physically make you colder. But some people can handle that and they just like riding in t-shirts. That's fine. A synthetic that does not wick, so it's not an athletic gear kind of thing, can leave your skin feeling cold as well. It holds sweat toward the skin. What we want, if you're having trouble staying warm, is to get the sweat away from your body. So here are the ways you can do that. You can have synthetics that are made for doing athletic things, running gear, hockey gear, and there's bike jerseys and long johns, etc. You could also have something like this. This is a polypropylene, very effective for wicking sweat Very effective, very inexpensive. Drawback of that one is, if you put it in the dryer, it melts. It's nasty. So not everybody wants that because they don't remember to keep it out of their dryer. You might have a wicking synthetic like this one, made for outdoor activities. That's awesome. The other thing that can keep sweat away from your body is a wool. So this is a wool item for your neck and head. And this is a wool shirt. What wool does, it's kind of magic. It can be expensive, but you can also find it secondhand. When it's against your skin, it keeps the sweat, keeps picking up the sweat so it's not near your skin. But also, when it's 100% wet, it's 80% insulative. So it's an awesome material. As well, compared to athletic synthetics, it has an antimicrobial from the sheep, and it will stave off stink. So it's not a perfect system. You have to wash it once in a while, but it's a little better at that. Let's go through some items and where you wear them on your body and why you might wear them on your body. So there's your head, and you would want your extremities, your poor little ears, to be pretty well covered from the wind. And these kind of garments keep even pinpricks of cold from getting into where your ears are. So these are awfully handy. A nice little headband, easy to carry as an extra if you want. You can get them in fun colors. And then let's revisit this. Let's look at the orange one this time. This is a tube. As I said, this one happens to be wool. And it's very, very versatile. So when you put it on, it can cover part of your head. It can cover your ears. You could double it up on your ears, or you could put it all the way down your neck. It can cover your mouth, your nose, whatever you like. Or you could just have it around your neck. So very versatile thing as well, a tube. Pretty easy to make at home if you're good at that sort of thing. For your hands, let's work our way down. For your hands, you notice I have these things that are not wicking, but they seem to work for me. You can add mitts, or you can add gloves, putting on layers and taking off layers as needed. If you're using gloves, that keeps your fingers away from each other, obviously. That increases the surface area that cold can get at you. If you're in a mitten, your fingers are together. So not only does that help you keep the wind away, but it also, you end up warming up each finger, like each finger warms each one up. So mittens are much warmer than gloves of the same R value. But there's another alternative. You can have something like this, which is a cycling glove. And it's designed so that you can hold onto the handlebar with this, and you can still change your gears or use your brakes. So that's what that's designed for. It keeps a couple of fingers together, so it's a little warmer than gloves. For torso, layers, layers, layers. Choose something wicking on the bottom. Sometimes it's good to have a zippered thing because this is a chimney. I start to overheat, I open this up, and then I cool off a little bit. For your legs, you might want to choose a number of different kinds of tights and or put on more specific to the purpose some winter pants. This has an advantage in that when your toes are getting cold, what might be happening is that the blood that runs along here is the blood that heats your toes, and it's right up where you get a lot of wind chill, right at the front there. So if you can cover that with a leg warmer or something like that, you'll go a long way to keeping your feet warm as well. And speaking of feet, you can have all kinds of different systems for your feet. You could have a wicking synthetic sock. You could have some wool socks that are thin. You could add some much more fluffy socks if you want. And you can wear simple hiking boots if it keeps you warm enough. Or you could go for something with an R value like these that are supposed to be good up to -40. These also have the advantage of covering some of that blood that's going to your feet. Do note that if you are layering up your feet a lot, to the point where your boots are tight, then you're going to lessen your the ability for your feet to stay warm, because if you squish insulation, it doesn't work anymore. So let's talk about another versatile item. Let's talk about scarves, because it's one of my favorites. This is always a good idea to have an extra scarf in your bag, because you can use it to cover part of your back and wrap around your torso. Now it's not almost like another shirt. Or if your ears are the problem that day, that's where they belong. This belongs. Done and done. This is a wool one, but it's a little boring. So if you're going to a meeting, maybe you want something with a little bit of color. You look quite nice arriving in this, and you again can wrap it however you like. You could even wrap it around your torso if you wanted, I suppose. Or you could have something nice like this. This is actually silk that does a little bit for insulation, but it keeps the wind off as well. And it wicks the moisture a little bit away from your skin. So you can look quite fancy if you try. And the grand finale, the coat. Again, I think about layer, layer, layer. So I put a few little layers on for -5 and many more layers for -20. But some people like a really big jacket. It's just their preference. So that can work for you perhaps. Or you could also wear a classic cycling jacket. That keeps the wind off really well. But don't be afraid to wear a few sweaters in nicer weather, nicer winter weather. Wear something sharp. See what this feels like. And if you're going out in the daytime and coming back when it's a little cooler at night, maybe you want to add a nicer looking shell. This is a rain jacket. It has a bit of style to it. It's not too bad, but it sure will keep the wind off just as well as that big clunky cycling jacket. This will also keep the wind off, and it's pretty chic, but there's nothing wicking about this whatsoever. So have a little fun with it. Look at what's in your closet when you're advising people. Absolutely. Talk about the diversity of clothing you could use. And if you do have a little bit of money to spend just this once, just this winter, maybe look at that base layer to keep you from feeling less sweaty. And that's probably the best place to start with fancy gear, is right near your skin to treat yourself nicely. Enjoy your ride.
When you're riding in the winter, it can be tricky to keep your hands warm. Here's some tips to help find what works for you. Gloves can make it easier to use shifters and brakes, but they can restrict circulation and be pretty cold. Mitts tend to be a lot warmer, as well as economical. However, it can make it a little bit clumsy to shift. Lobster claw gloves can be a pretty good compromise, though they tend to be a little bit more expensive. And sometimes they're more intended for Vancouver winters. Bogies, sometimes known as bar mitts, can be a game changer for the cold-fingered. They stay on the bike, covering the brakes and shifters, and they create a cozy little bubble to keep your hands nice and warm. You can even make your own. They just need to cut the wind. Disposable chemical hand warmers can also give you a little bit more heat. Just expose them to air and throw them in your glove. And here's a tip. Once you're done with them, put them in a Ziploc bag to cut off the air supply, and you'll be able to reuse them later.
Hi, Eduardo again, and welcome to route finding. So, in the winter, you have to find a good route. Things change from summer riding. You have bulkier clothes to think of. The way you ride changes. Riding is also slower. Remember, there's snow and ice on the road. Plan ahead. It's always good to plan ahead. Doesn't matter what adventure you're going to, plan ahead. In the winter, your gears are going to be colder. The grease is going to freeze over. So just think about it and think. Check the weather before you go out. The weather changes in Edmonton from really cold to really hot in the afternoon. So that's going to affect how you ride and how fast you go. Also, remember, your tires, the air in the tires changes based on the temperature. So that's also going to affect your rolling resistance. So it's always a good idea to plan ahead. Check the weather before you go out. Also, check which route you're going to be taking. You have multiple places to check the route. You have Google Maps, you have the City of Edmonton website, and we also have physical maps. When you go to Google Maps, remember, there's limitations. Google Maps doesn't always give you the best route, and there may be caveats to the route that it's giving you. It does not have all the cycling routes available in the city. That's why you always check Google Maps and also check the City of Edmonton. City of Edmonton provides great resources to cycle around the city. We have the downtown cycling routes. The cycling network is great. Always use it. Also, if you find yourself without internet and without access to any of the City of Edmonton resources, you can always come down to one of our shops and we can provide you with a physical map. Physical maps are always a good idea. They don't need internet, and you will always find a good place to ride.
Winter cycling provides some big challenges for preventing slipping and falling. Some people say that when they winter ride, they slip and fall all the time, and some people say that they rarely slip and fall. Truth is that with a little bit of coordination and an understanding about how your body works on the bike, understanding what the bike can do for you, and understanding and getting used to and getting experience with the conditions goes a long way to lowering your risk of slipping and falling. So what we're going to do here is discuss the physics of you on the bike and the conditions. We're going to break it apart we're going to break them apart to look at the skills one at a time to help you prevent slipping and falling. Let's demystify it. So let's isolate the skills that you need. First, let's just work on straight line riding with confidence. What you'll be doing is you'll be picking a safe spot and riding straight ahead, and you're going to find that when you go slow through snow or on ice, you're more likely to fall. So what you want to do is get up a little bit of speed. And what's happening there is that as you exert force into the wheels, the wheels go forward, and there's a centripetal force. And what that means is when you slightly slip, the centripetal force pulls the wheel back to center. So on little tiny slips, your wheel will work towards you and for you if you have a little bit of speed. So we're going to work on straight line riding first. So the other thing you can practice is a pretty simple thing as well. It's stopping. If you're somebody who, when you stop, you get out of the saddle, balance, and put your foot down, awesome. What you need to improve is putting that foot out a little farther. That way you create a triangle of your foot, the bike, and the ground. And you're much more stable stopping, especially if you're stopping on sheer ice. But if you're somebody who stops while your butt's still in the saddle, it's not going to be very stable for you winter cycling. So look for some videos of people who get up out of their saddle, balance with one foot on the lower pedal, and put the other foot down. And then remember to add that you swing the lower foot out to create that triangle. Practice it over and over. It's essential. So now you've gotten yourself, or whoever you're teaching, riding in a straight line with confidence. Now you've worked on stopping. So put them together, and once those are together pretty well, add shoulder checking while riding. This is important because with shoulder checking, you're going to shift your weight. So this is a great way to nail that straight line riding. And you can do it in a little bit of snow, you can do it on some ice with some care with a new person, but you get my drift. You're working on moving the body, but keeping the bike still. So practice that a few times, that'll be good. And now, again with straight line riding, move toward a straight line, keeping the pedaling consistent. So don't speed up or slow down. Practice that, And now try turning. Unlike summer cycling, where you lift the foot that's inside of the turn, so you'll lift this foot on this turn, and you'll lift this foot on this turn. Unlike that, in winter cycling, especially when you have ice, you continue to cycle, you continue to pedal just a little bit, and that means consistent force. So you're not changing anything. You're changing one thing, turning, but you're not changing the force moving forward. So give that a go. Try it a couple of times, and even though you're practicing turning, when you come to stop, make sure you or the person you're teaching stops in the correct manner. So you've put together a few things now. Don't hesitate to practice those over and over again and find new terrain to practice them on. But as well, I want to talk about some tricky spots. One is sheer ice. With sheer ice, you want to have as few variables change as possible. So find a spot that's sheer ice and cycle over it, again with the pedaling being very consistent, very little movement in the arms. Try and relax the arms a little bit so you're not really tense, and see how it goes. Again, hopefully under easier conditions, you've worked on a perfect speed, because you don't want to go too slow, but you don't want to go too fast either. So give that a go. And then finally, about ice. If you're headed downhill and there's a scary ice patch, well, ice patches are scary. No harm in getting off and walking if you want. What I do is I try to keep everything the same, including I keep pedaling, because that's a consistent movement. What I don't want to do is increase my speed. So that's the one situation where I'm going straight forward, where I have my hands on the brakes. Just feather them a little bit. Not on and off, feather them. So you can give that a go. It's a little scary, but I've done it over and over again, and I have gotten off my bike sometimes because it looked too scary. So that's the one instance where you're moving forward still and your hands are still on the brakes. Every other instant, your hands should not be on the brake, especially if you're worried about a turn, for example. Don't interrupt your force by braking.
This is known as brown sugar. It's a mixture of snow, sand, and salt that has been churned into a thick mess by cars. Riding through this stuff is a slog. The way it grabs your wheels, causing them to fishtail, can be super disconcerting. If you're just dealing with brown sugar and don't have any ice or anything like that underneath, the best strategy is just gear down, power through it, and maintain momentum. Usually the worst thing that can happen riding through brown sugar is you just get exhausted, or you get bogged down and stall out. If there's ice underneath it, however, that's when things can get really treacherous and you want to take a lot more caution.
Thank you guys very much for joining me in the winter cycling video and sharing some information for people to get started going. Both of you winter cycle, so I wanted to just sit down and have a chat about what motivates you to winter cycle, what inhibits you from winter cycling, both, physically, how you're set up, but also mentally. So, Biz, earlier you were mentioning you have some things that limit you from winter cycling.
Yeah, I have two main motivations for why I like to cycle. One is exercise, but my main one I would say is environmental reasons. The less I can ride my car or drive my car, the better. But unfortunately, I also live in a fairly small apartment with no place to store big bikes. So I have a folding bike in order to accommodate for the limited space, which is absolutely a dream to ride in the summertime, but it has a hard time riding in the thicker snow. So I really have to watch the weather and watch the road conditions to make sure that it is something that my bike can handle. But anytime that those conditions are doable, I will definitely take my bike out, you bet.
Great. Do you have a dream bike? Is there some particular bike that you would love? And if you had it, do you think that you would be cycling in all kinds of conditions?
I would love to have a fat bike for the winter. I think there would be nothing to stop me from going out in the winter if that was the case, for sure.
Nice. Excellent. Eduardo, what about you? I see you on your bike all the time. You arrive to the shop in the winter on your bike. What inhibits you? Like, what inhibits you from cycling in the winter, if anything? And then what motivates you?
At the beginning, it was mostly I was scared of the ice. I'm not from Canada, so my first winter here, I spun around at an intersection, and that just put like a mental block to be able to ride in the winter.
So, Eduardo, did you spin around on your bike?
No, in the car actually. It just a big intersection from one point to the other. It just went around, and that's what I thought riding on the bike was gonna be worse. So one day I just decided to just go for it, and I grabbed one of my bikes and started riding in the winter. It has it's scary because you have to change the way you ride. Your core works more than in the summer. So, but now just going out is just a blessing. It's just your mind just like clears. So it's good to get out of the house in the winter.
That's why you mostly ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, a long time ago, when there weren't many winter cyclists on the roads in Edmonton, I saw a few, and I thought, well, why do I have to stop in the summer? I can do that too. So I tried, and I failed miserably. Like, I got into an ice rut, wiped out, almost got hit by a car. Like, it was catastrophic. And later, I was able, when I met people who winter cycled, I was able to talk to them and glean from their advice about route finding, about what to wear, and all this kind of stuff. So that's why I love passing on that information. For me, environmental reasons are absolutely really essential in terms of transportation choices. But as well, honestly, for years I've been talking about it's great for the environment, but honestly, a lot of people who bike report that the number one thing that they love about winter cycling is that it's fun. And for me, that's it. I get on, I am, I feel 40 years younger, I'm out in the community, I see people's faces, I see what's going on in the city way more clearly than driving. So, me too, I like to ride.
I find that when you're driving to work, the entire time you are driving, you are stressed. When you are biking to work, the entire time you are biking, you are free.
You are free, I love that. I want to give a big thank you to both Alberta Ecotrust and Everactive Schools for funding this video.